Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Megan Thompson with Megan Thompson Coaching, and I have Savannah here. Savannah, welcome. So
Hello.
excited to speak with you
Thank
today. Yeah. All right. So excited. First of all, just introduce yourself to our audience here to speak a little bit about just the biggest result that you had in working with us.
Of course. So I'm Savannah. I'm married to Alan, and we have two beautiful daughters. We have Evie, who is 7, and she is our highly sensitive kiddo. And then we have Belle, who is 6, who is possibly highly sensitive. Jury's still out on her. Probably our biggest result that we have gained from boot camp was actually a change in our entire family dynamics. Just with us listening and communicating with each other. It actually changed mine and Alan's marriage, how we communicate, and that trickled down to how we communicated about the girls and how we communicated with them. So I think they feel safer. Not that we were trying to be an unsafe family. I think it was actually just making them feel a part of the family, that we listen to them and we cherish them.
Right. I love that. Just noticing how intentional you were in building and fostering the growth of your family from the beginning. And, obviously intentionally, we want to raise our children in a safe home, physically and emotionally. And yet some of the skills parenting non-highly sensitive kids that's touted in mainstream parenting world is super ineffective for parenting highly sensitive kids, right? So I love knowing that for you, it was just this pervasive shift for the whole dynamic.
It was a huge shift. And I think gaining those skills, we just didn't know that there were other skills out there.
So let's talk about that. Where were you before we met?
Before, we were pretty miserable. I hate to say we were pretty disheartened. I had wanted to be a mom for so long, and then here's my kiddo who seems melancholy, very easily upset by any little thing that got said, retreating if someone maybe didn't even mean to hurt her feelings, and there was a lack of connection there. And it was heartbreaking, and I'm ashamed to say I was embarrassed by her crying and pouting. And I think a lot of that was because that was my personality as a child. And I had stuffed all of that down. So I was expecting her to do the same. And I was like, we've got to get through this. We've got to be normal. So I just felt helpless in how to help my baby girl, because I wanted her to have so much more than I had felt growing up. And then it was just this turmoil that I was failing her and failing myself. I knew I wasn't being a great mom.
And that, just hearing that, right? Just noticing that you were trying, right? Working very hard to do whatever you could. But that internal gut sense of, I'm not meeting my kids' needs. What was that like for you, Savannah?
It was gut-wrenching. I remember crying a lot that I was not the kind of mom that I had dreamed of being. And I didn't know where to meet her. Like when we would see these flashes of just this amazing kid, and then they would be gone, and we'd be like, but no, we want that. We wanted other people to enjoy her too.
So why was it so important for you to see more of that in your daughter and to take action to fix the problem?
I just realized that we were at such a crucial point in her life and in our juncture as being her parents, that we were still in the young years. We hadn't hit puberty. We weren't dealing with raging hormones
Mhm.
and all of that. And I figured if there was a way that we could help her, it would be now rather than waiting till the later years. And I was petrified that she
Mhm.
would self-medicate with drugs
Mhm.
or sex
Mhm.
or, even contemplate suicide. And
Mhm.
that fear was just so real for me that that's
Mhm.
what kind of set me on a course to fix it. I was like,
Mhm.
I know there's a solution out there.
Mhm.
I just have to find it.
Mhm. Mhm. And for you and your husband, noticing the whole dynamic of the family, what were you guys trying before you found MTC?
We had gotten to the point where we knew counseling, we wanted to try counseling,
Mhm.
and we found a play therapist because I had done a bunch of reading and I was like, okay, this has got to be our best option. If they learn through play, let's go with play therapy. It was still misguided in the sense of we were relying on that to fix her and give
Mhm.
her all the skills. We
Mhm.
just didn't know that it was
Mhm.
really going to be a family effort. So
Mhm.
we were doing that, and then at home we were really doing what had been done to us as kids. We
Yeah.
were getting the behavior with guilt and shame.
Mhm. Mhm.
The stuff that I completely regret,
Mhm.
but I was just trying in my misguided attempts to help her fit in.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even though it didn't work with me, I thought maybe
Yeah.
if we push harder, it'll work this time.
Mhm. Mhm. Talk about that. We dove deep into the knowledge that you're also a highly sensitive person in our work together in boot camp.
Very much so.
Yeah, and freeing that component that, like you said earlier, was just stuffed into a box
Yes.
um, in your lifetime, um, and so it makes sense that the way you were parented was ingrained as this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way that we're supposed to act. This is, my kid's not acting this particular way, so that you need to get it together. Love bug, right?
Exactly. Like, I love you
Right.
so much, but like the world's not going to wait for you. Like we've got to snap to
Mm,
it. And
hmm.
that breaks my heart because I didn't know or if I knew that there was something better, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, yeah. So why did what you were trying before not work? You used the word misguided. So talk to me about that. How did you come to the realization what you were trying didn't work?
She It was getting worse.
Mm,
Her moods were, I was like, maybe she is struggling with childhood depression or anxiety. I was looking for a diagnosis
hmm.
to
Hmm.
try to fix
Hmm.
because I was so scared. I
Hmm.
wanted to help her.
Hmm.
But I was looking for fixes.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I just didn't know that there were skills that I could do, that she doesn't have a disorder
Hmm.
necessarily,
Hmm.
that we can actually help her in the midst of what she's dealing with.
Hmm. Hmm. So in that, what was it like just dropping her off at appointments, waiting for things to get better while at home? Is that what you're inferring?
Well, that's exactly. We went to a couple of sessions of play therapy and then COVID hit.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
that was gone. She was so young, we couldn't do
Hmm.
telehealth or anything like that. So
Hmm.
then we were left with dealing with all these big emotions during a pandemic.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was even more of a struggle. And I think after we had her at home, homeschooling them while school was on pause, that's
Hmm.
when we knew we seriously needed help. We were out of
Hmm.
our league.
Hmm. Hmm. So how did you find us?
The Google search got me. I
The
had
Google.
the Google. So I had been searching the highly sensitive personality trait,
Hmm.
and when you Google stuff, it starts popping up on Facebook.
Mhm.
And so Megan Thompson coaching had popped up, and I kept it a complete secret from everybody, which sounds crazy to me now, but it was so different from everything I'd ever learned that I just needed to absorb it myself.
Mhm.
And I was terrified that if I shared the information, somebody would burst my bubble and we'd be
Ooh.
back to step one.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
I just listened, and I would
Mhm.
attend the different webinars, and I would
Mhm.
listen, and I was
Mhm.
like, okay. And it took me a couple of months before I actually had the courage to talk with Alan.
Mhm.
And I was like, I explained it to him, and he was like, let's do it. And I think within a
So
week,
Alan, he's like, hey, you know what you're talking
Alan's
about.
like, you've done your and he
Yeah.
says, he's like, you've done your research, so I figure just let you roll with it. And I was like, well, I've been doing research for a couple of months. And so by the time we got to the call, we were ready for a change.
Mhm.
But it just didn't
Mhm.
know what it was going to be.
Mhm. Mhm. And so in that, with that being said, you know, being the highly sensitive person you were, you let this soak in. Some of you, some part of you was nervous that the bubble would be burst. So there's skepticism and worry behind that thought process, right? So what were you concerned about and what were you contemplating before you said to your husband, look, this is actually it. This is where we need to go.
I was so terrified that my family would judge me
Mm.
on choosing to parent differently, that it would be a judgment on them, that I was
Mm-hmm.
saying the way y'all did it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want, I had great parents. They just didn't
Yeah.
have the skills either. They were so loving and caring.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I was terrified that I was going to hurt them, but
Mm-hmm.
also I had this fear because I had never felt enough or
Mm-hmm.
good enough
Mm-hmm.
that if I did things different and paved my own way,
Mm-hmm.
it would be wrong.
Mm. Mm. Wow. And we've worked on that. You've heard my story too, right? Just in terms of what it's like to shift this and to be a leader in that space. Same thing, right? My parents were doing the best they can with the knowledge that they had, doing way better than how they were parented too.
Very
And
much
yet complete paradigm shift from how we were parented, traditional, suck it up, get it together, all that jazz. If mom is not happy, ain't nobody happy, right?
exactly.
And we're
Very
not from
much
the South,
so.
you are, but
I
it's the same
am.
mentality.
I know that. And I didn't want to ruffle any feathers because I felt like my entire life had been ruffling feathers. And I had tried to hide that now, stuffed it all down. But I realized, well, what we're doing isn't working. So something's got to be better.
Mm-hmm. 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 So in noticing that, what about Alan? Especially because you work in the healthcare field, we know he defers to your knowledge in that respect, in addition to parenting. But any skepticism? Like you said, I mean, it didn't surprise me. He was like, "All right, honey, let's do it."
Exactly. He's much more like, okay, let's do this. And he did, because he struggled when we first, it was so foreign to us.
Yeah.
Some of it just sounded crazy. And we were like, what have we done?
Mm-hmm.
But then when we started seeing the results, and then our own change in our marriage, we couldn't deny any of the changes that were taking place. And it was pretty amazing to see that. So he came to it with skepticism, but he was deferring to me, which was terrifying. He trusted me. I think he figured I have enough fear. He knows my personality. I have enough fear and anxiety that I wouldn't have signed us up for something that I didn't think we could do.
Oh, I love that. Oh man, Savannah, that is huge. That is so huge. I want to break that down because so many family members of the families that we speak to who have that conversation with us, when one parent is so certain and the other parent hasn't been doing as much research on what we do, the results we create with the clients that we work with, all of that. Alan's perspective that you just shared here, which was he trusted that you're so focused on getting it right the first time, him being highly sensitive, and or type A, right? Not
Exactly.
both, the perfect combo. That he knew that you had done enough research to not need to lead you astray, that you were ready to make that shift and you had weighed the odds. So he was able to defer to you in that respect.
Very much so. And I think that, you know, that's over years of our marriage. We've, you know, that's kind of how we roll sometimes. And so I think that really helped. By the time we got there, we knew we had a problem, and this sounds like the best solution for our family.
So you guys jumped in. What's one of the things that you just mentioned, what we were asking you to do felt completely foreign. So, let's give the audience a high level overview of just something that just felt so wild and out of your box.
It's actually I have it written down in my journal. The very first thing is to validate the emotion and shut my mouth. That was so foreign to me, because how can I fix her behavior if I don't talk her to death?
Yes.
Like, I'm here for you. I need to help you work through this. And I did not realize that the first couple of weeks would really be about my own change, and my response to her would actually break down barriers so that she could start to name her emotions. And we did not get that. We did by week 5. But we couldn't have built those foundational building blocks without it. And I needed to remove my junk so I could focus on my kiddo. And, I was skeptical, because not talking to it felt like lax parenting. And so beautiful. I was very scared of that judgment on me, that I wasn't, Savannah, you used to could get the behavior you wanted no matter what. And I could. But what was I doing to her to get that behavior? To stuff down those feelings. I need you to act like this. And to step back and validate her emotions and move towards working through them was a very, very big change. For us. And it seemed foreign, and there was a lot of, it just was radically different.
Being able to trust the process was incredibly important, right?
Very much so.
Because it requires a lot of patience.
With yourself, because you're like, oh, I did not shut my mouth on that one.
With ourselves, right? With our children. Yeah. So what happened right away when you started to slow down and notice that?
When I started focusing on her, I just saw how incredibly precious she was. And I saw her, and I began changing how I felt about her emotions, because my judgment was based on, they were a reflection of how I felt about my own. And so I began to let go of that judgment and to be able to help her through those emotions. And I think one of the things that we would say, Evie's highly sensitive. This is not a phase. And I had wrote that down from one of the calls, that this is who we are. This is where we're at. And yes, it's tough, and it's okay to say it's tough.
Yeah.
But we're making changes. And that we weren't just allowing her to wallow in these emotions, like, you're really sad, and then we're just gonna let you be sad for the rest of your life. No.
Right.
But it wasn't that passive, but we also weren't trying to fix her because she was broken.
Yeah.
I think finding that line of judgment and dispelling that was probably the biggest initial shift.
I love that. being able to hold the expectation without forcing her to meet it immediately. And just like you said at the beginning, it wasn't because you were like, you know, not trying to create a loving home. It was just the strategy, the tactics that you were using, A, weren't strategic, but B, weren't effective.
Not at all. They were completely ineffective. They were doing the exact opposite of what we really wanted. We just didn't know how to get there.
So bring us up to speed. Where are you today? How many meltdowns were you dealing with before? Right. Let's get specific. And then now, at this point, what do you experience?
It may not have been for us. The meltdowns were more of a daily melancholy. I think it was pretty significant. I mean, enough that I thought we were dealing with some serious stuff. And now we have burst maybe once a day. It's not, and it's over in usually 5 minutes of just working through the emotions. And I think actually both girls have benefited so much because they can both, they're not ashamed to express how they're feeling. They can tell us exactly they can name their emotions, which before it was, I don't know why I feel like this. And there was they did not have the language to be able to talk to us, which is what I wanted them to tell me, but I wasn't giving them the language to be able to tell me. So that any outbursts of emotions are definitely shorter. We had some behavior bursts and some meltdowns in the middle of the process as we were unpacking those emotions. And now we have such a happier little girl who can come home from school and not cry the whole way home from school. That we base our parenting on those skills instead of those principles that we thought we had to follow, that we had grown up with. And even where our family is as a whole today, the very thing that I was terrified that they would judge us and think, they had lots of questions along the way. Why are you not doing that? Right. But it has changed so much how my parents even interact with me, how they interact with my kids, how they interact with the other grandkids. And my mom uses it in her classroom.
Love it.
School.
That's it.
So it has just influenced our little sphere.
That's it.
For the better. And that's what you can't ask for more.
That's right. That's how we're going to eliminate suicidal thoughts and actions for highly sensitive kids around the world, because your communication style doesn't just stick with your family.
No, that ripple effect just goes out.
I love it. I love it. Oh, phenomenal. Savannah, what advice would you give to the audience listening in, or anything else that you want to make sure that we share today in this conversation?
One of the things I thought of was, I always love the line during boot camp is to hold the line. And finding out that I didn't have to rush in and fix everything and get caught in the crossfire of their emotions and my emotions and just explode everywhere was just huge. Learning that each building block stacked up on one another, and that we could stand strong behind that every single step, that they were learning how to experience their emotions and take responsibility for their own actions.
Yeah.
So I think holding the line for me encompasses so much more than just like one little part. It goes back to everything. Even when when things start getting tough, usually I can tell it's a mindset shift with me, that they're not acting any different. They're usually using the skills that I've taught them, but my own mindset has shifted and I'm not responding the way that I need to. And I think that has been huge to learn. And I think that it's a constant growth, that even though you learn the skills, you're always learning, and that you can continually repair that and start over and keep going. It's not even starting over. It's just repairing and moving forward. And I think that's the biggest thing, that there's so much change, but it doesn't have to take place all at once.
Fantastic. Following a system makes it easier to trust that, right?
Very much so.
So, in noticing, you know, if a family is in the same position that you were in, just their child is lovingly, affectionately, we might refer to as Eeyore, just all day a cloud is just over their head. They don't know what to do, and they're trying everything that they could think of to break out of this pattern. What would you say they should do first in breaking out of this and noticing what's going to work?
Reach out. Reach out for that initial call. I had so many reservations because even though I'd watched all the webinars and done all that, having that first contact call broke down so many of my fears and placed Evie squarely of like, that you're not alone in this. And I think we fear that our kid's the only Eeyore in the room, and that we're dealing with things no one else knows about, and that it's our shameful secret. It's not. And I think knowing that there are other people, there is a community of people dealing with similar things, just take that step to reach out.
Love it. Yes, exactly. What we do might work for your family if you're listening, and the only way we know how to tell you if it will is if we have a conversation, because trust is built in a conversation. So being able to share what we do and how we do it, and specifically what's going to work with your family is family specific. Savannah, you know that, right? You've seen families who are dealing with similar Eeyore situations, but other families who are dealing with all kinds of situations, and we tailor what we do to fit the family.
Most certainly. And I think it was neat to see throughout the time that even though we may not be dealing with a certain behavior at one point, if later we might, and then we could draw on the experience of other people that we had already listened and talked with. And that was some of the most beneficial things that I could ever have had, was just the community of like-minded parents who wanted the best for their kids.
I love that. Yes, exactly. So what would you say to yourself this time last year, knowing what you know now, if you were there?
I would say you're doing the right thing. Like, your little girl is in there and she is going to blossom. Just do the work. Get in there and don't be so scared. If I can go back and be less scared those first couple of weeks. But I know that all of that was just a process to get through. But if I could go in and be, let's just tackle all of it right now, but I'm so thankful to Savannah of 8 months ago that took that step, that huge leap to be able to do something completely radical and different, and that can be who we are as a family.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Love it. Always a pleasure, Savannah. Thank you so much for having this conversation, for sharing that hope for parents, and that there is a way out of this just spinning of feeling like you don't know what's working and what you're doing is and noticing that what you're doing isn't working, and yet trying all the things to help their kids, right? So thank you again. And parents, those of you listening in who are dealing with daily meltdowns or daily melancholy, where you just notice that your gem of a child is hidden behind a bunch of sadness rocks, and you need support in chipping that away. And you want to do that strategically and specifically so that you can get on with living your beautiful life with your beautiful family, then go ahead and book a call with us. Go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/chalk, and we'll have a conversation about where you're stuck, where you're struggling, where you want to go, whether or not your goals match up with what we do here at MTC. And if that's the case, we'll tell you exactly how that works and you can get started right away. we are happy to have this conversation with you, and look forward to that. And we'll see you on the next show. Thank you. Bye, Savannah. Thank you so much for your
Bye.
time.